Daniel Bryan, which, his other name would be Bryan Danielson, going to AEW. Do you think this could actually happen? And do you think it would be smart by, Daniel Bryan going and switching companies to AEW?
Boy, it's going to be a huge change in wrestling culture as we know it if he does, because, we are talking about, if there are any superstars that are still active that have a huge fan base that will follow him anywhere, Daniel Bryan's got to be near the top of that list. There is a huge Daniel Bryan cult that is obsessed with everything he's about. And WWE's brought him back multiple times from deadly injuries just to have that same group back. And you could tell his matches are always just have a different energy, a different feel about them that always attracts so many people towards them. Of course, Daniel Bryan's most well known for his insane WrestleMania triple threat match against Randy Orton and Batista, while he still had the injured shoulder, the separated shoulder, I believe, which was insane to watch and really, really fun to see him have that true underdog moment and be able to come back and have that insane match. But now, of course, he's getting really, really up there in age. He finally has a child now, I believe, and he's looking towards retiring soon. So I would love to see him get an opportunity at AEW. I don't see it being a very long run, maybe just a couple of, kind of like a Sting sort of idea where he just comes in and has a couple of rivalries, maybe wrestles for about a year or so, and then, leaves possibly. Do I think it happens? I'm not entirely sure. I would lean towards no at the moment. I just see him being too closely connected with WWE for such a long time for me to believe that he's leaving. And I did hear rumors recently that Nikki and Brie Bella are thinking about coming back to wrestling temporarily 1 year. So maybe he wants to stay around for that. But if not, if that never happens, certainly see it as a possibility of him maybe just trying it out and giving it a shot for a year or two. And I would love to see it. It would be really, really entertaining.
Yeah, to me, the main factor is, Brie Bella and Nikki Bella, because, I believe they were recently inducted into the, WWE Hall of Fame. And, if she returns, I think the odds of this happening are pretty much go to like 1% or 0%. But if they don't return to wrestling, I think this could happen. Honestly, AEW fans have just at different times, different, this is going to be a surprise guest. They have just stupid expectations. For instance, I don't remember which pay-per-view it was, but, it was announced that, Tony Khan, it was going to, change wrestling. It was Christian Cage, guy who's in his mid-40s and hasn't wrestled on a consistent basis for like 9 years. Some people thought that could have been, Brock Lesnar or CM Punk. But to me, I don't know. I think, them having this huge venue, because, there's over 20,000, seats at that place. They're really trying to get it sold out. And the fact that they're getting on, TNT on Dynamite, not a pay-per-view, to me kind of increases the possible, chances of it happening, because you're having a huge event on TV. People who don't really watch AEW, let's see, this, and, there's a huge rumor, we've not watched wrestling for years. I wonder, who it might be. And if it's, it would turn out to be, Daniel Bryan, which would be, Bryan Danielson, that would be absolutely huge. And, he's not what he used to be. Honestly, I've never been a big, Daniel Bryan fan. Obviously he has a huge fan base, and I would say he probably has a year or two, like you said. But if you're able to get him, honestly, with CM Punk, Brock Lesnar, I don't see Brock Lesnar happening at all. I don't really see CM Punk happening. Daniel Bryan, to me, is out of those three is easily the most likely to happen. I'm not saying it will, but just out of the three, I think if I had to pick one that could happen, it's definitely going to be Daniel Bryan. Because, before he was with WWE, he was a huge guy, on the indie scene for years, with Ring of Honor. I think I'm not for sure. I think he might have been in New Japan. I can't remember. But, we've seen Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. And, basically, some of the, founders of AEW been the top guys at indie scenes for, years now. And, Daniel Bryan has a relationship, with the Young Bucks. I would be very intrigued for this to happen, because all of a sudden you think about Daniel Bryan, Kenny Omega. I know he's not what he used to be, but Chris Jericho is still a pretty good big draw. The Young Bucks, Moxley. All of a sudden, if you get Aleister Black to be a top star, which I think he's more than capable of possibly being, all of a sudden, they're not going to have bigger ratings than WWE, but if you get Daniel Bryan, you're going to get at least 50 to 100,000 more viewers on a consistent basis week by week, getting a huge main draw, probably the biggest realistic free agent right now in wrestling, because I wouldn't really consider CM Punk or Lesnar, because if Lesnar comes back, I mean, there's no chance he's going to AEW. Vince McMahon will give him a huge contract to stay. CM Punk, I don't see him returning to wrestling. But with Daniel Bryan, he's a guy who loves wrestling. It's his passion. He was not medically cleared to wrestle. Still, despite not being medically cleared, was a manager on SmackDown, and eventually got cleared. Was able to wrestle some. He's not going to be a full time. He's going to be a part timer, like a Sting, like you mentioned. This would make so much sense. This would be a genius move. If I'm AEW, I'm paying as much money as he wants. I don't think it has anything to do with if AEW wants him. I mean, if you're AEW, you would love to have a guy like Daniel Bryan in your locker room and in your company. It's going to make you so much money. It's going to help you with ratings and everything, and make you a bigger threat to WWE. But I think it just goes down to how much Daniel Bryan wants to continue wrestling. If he will actually leave, the WWE for AEW. We've seen this happen with Mark Henry and the Big Show, and those are not huge draws. They were both sucky wrestlers, but the fact they've been with WWE for so long, nobody heard anything about them, and then all of a sudden they're with AEW. That was kind of shocking to many people. Maybe we see a similar situation with Daniel Bryan to AEW. I would say right now, I would give it about a 20% chance, because I feel like there's going to be a surprise person there. But at the same time, AEW has let down people multiple times when it comes down to surprise, people. I know, Aleister Black was last week. I'm not saying that was a letdown. I mean, that was a big surprise. But other times, for instance, Tony Khan said there was going to be a huge, guy going to AEW, and we've seen Doc Gallows and Carl Anderson from Impact Wrestling and New Japan go there. That storyline, everything has just been complete utter crap. We've seen also New Japan Pro Wrestling, kind of having collab with AEW a little bit too, but nothing nearly what anybody expected. I mean, not Okada, not Will Ospreay, or any of those guys on AEW television. I think I would say 20% chance right now. I really think there is going to be a surprise at the Arthur Ashe Stadium in September, but it's just really hard to tell if it's going to be Daniel Bryan, because he's one of those WWE loyal guys. It's going to be really hard to see him leave WWE for a rival company.
And if he sticks with WWE, he's going to get plenty of other opportunities in the future, whether it's going to be in wrestling or actually back as a manager or front office member. Because of course, I thought he performed that really well whenever he was a manager of SmackDown. He was a very entertaining manager to watch, and of course, it was pretty fun if you got to interact with certain heels and stuff like that. Of course, like the Miz. He's got a spot somewhere in WWE, and they're going to pay him a lot of money to do it. So the real question is whether or not AEW is willing to pay more than what WWE would be willing to pay. And at this point, I don't know if they have the same budget as WWE to make that a decision or not. So, of course, we'll have to see. So, it'd be really exciting to see him get his opportunity there. But at this point, I agree with you. I think it is a pretty low chance as of right now. But it is certainly something that we can, watch later down the road and see if it possibly can happen.
And something else with AEW compared to WWE. With WWE, if he signs with them, you're going to be a front office person or something like that. With AEW, the thing that I would say he would be much more intrigued by is kind of the free creative control type of deal. You can basically do whatever you want, and for the most part, if he wants to have a different character gimmick, if he wants to be even a manager, I mean, I don't think that would happen, but we've seen other guys do that with AEW. Maybe with creative control with AEW, maybe ultimately leads him there. I doubt it, but I'm very interested by this. Like I said, I'm not a huge Daniel Bryan fan, but if he goes to AEW, I'm very intrigued, because imagine a match with him against like Kenny Omega or something like that. Like, that has match of the year written all over it. And that's going to be, I mean, Moxley and Omega last year on Dynamite, that was I would say one of the biggest matches to date in AEW. But if you have Daniel Bryan and Omega, that's definitely going to, top that. I mean, the different storylines and feuds you're going to have with Daniel Bryan makes it really interesting. Who knows if this will happen? I'm not really thinking it will, but if it does, that's going, in my opinion, probably it's going to change wrestling. And I think it's with AEW and WWE, it's going to make it a lot more interesting when it comes to ratings and a lot more competitive when it comes to two wrestling, businesses.